Wow. A song we all actually know to lead off church, or many of us know. Welcome to All Souls Church in Greenfield. This, I think, is the first week in which masks are appreciated but not required, is the new phrase. So we've dropped our level of concern to some degree. Probably the biggest news of the day is that after the service, there's going to be a kind of a brief coffee hour, and then there'll be a discussion about the future of All Souls and a chance to brainstorm up the life of the place moving forward, and that should be exciting. I have to introduce that I was listening to that soundtrack driving across out of Salt Lake City one time, and I was in the car, and I was thinking about Jesus, actually, and I was thinking of the soundtrack, and I thought, you think you're brave driving across the country in your own car, but you're just such a coward. You're not going to do anything. And then it was the Black Rock Desert, and I thought, if you had any courage at all, you would drive off where all those rocket cars race to do the speed tests, because it's salt flats. And I drove my car off on the salt flats, and it got stuck about 30 yards from the highway, and I had to have it towed onto the highway. So I curse you, Andrew Lloyd Webber. So, that's right. And I'm glad everybody got the memo, or most of us, to sit on the left-hand side of the church. That's appreciated. No, I'm kidding. Today's service is about what Jesus gets wrong, which exactly means that UUs are a tough crowd. And we, like nobody else, I think, have engaged critical thinking and a pursuit of truth so high on our list of religious values that we sort of are forced, it is our specific duty as UUs to ask those tough questions and to provide that kind of religious skepticism that so many traditions are afraid of, right? That is who we are. So today's sermon re-examines some of what Jesus is thought to have said, might have said, is put in his mouth, with the rarely asked but very obviously, glaringly missing question from our culture is, what did he get right and what did he get wrong, now that we're almost exactly 2,000 years from his ministry? So that's the theme of the service, and I welcome you all here today. And it is, I believe, time for our prelude. What a treat, kid. Our chalice words are such. You can read along if you like. I dedicate this to the followers of Jesus to those Christians who serve the marginalized of the world with sacrifice and courage, to the many and the always too few of those followers of Jesus who really live out the daring compassion they see in their hero and or their Savior. May we, you use, identifying as Christian or not, always see these good people as our brothers and sisters in faith. May the Christians of the world walk through the world listening to Jesus' strong spirit whisper in their ears and be blessed by it. And more importantly, may we here always see each other as teammates. Our responsive reading does require your involvement. Your scars and fate tell an ugly story. The tale of the world's raw power to crush that which stands before it. But despite that, you were not ashamed of your wounds. And the slow fire of your compassion, and the forgiveness you kindle. Help us even now to melt the chains of fear and cynicism that bind our hearts and bodies. Our congregational covenant. In this house, we covenant with one another to create a community built on a foundation of love, to work together to promote equality, justice, peace, accepting responsibility for our individual acts, to stand on the side of love, embracing the region of oppressed minorities and working to end discrimination, unjust privilege, to communicate with kindness and support, and to serve with compassion and commitment, to listen respectfully and value our diversity as a source of our collective strength, to learn and grow together, generously sharing our time, talents, and treasures, to celebrate the joys of discovery from the wonder of youth to the wisdom of age, to openly share our laughter and our tears, showing reverence for the divine in all that is. And if you can accomplish half of that, you're doing pretty good. It's now time for our offertory, and with it a silly story from me before we sing. There was a farmer, and the farmer decided spontaneously to attend the local church in town. He had never been. He had just finished his morning chores, and off to church he went straight into town, dirty with his work clothes. The town folks looked a little dismissively at him at first. And after the service was over, as they walked out, the pastor said to the farmer, "Next time you think about coming here, which we love you to do, my advice would be to ask God in prayer what you should wear." The farmer agreed to do this very thing. And the following Sunday, the farmer returned to the church in the same work clothes. "Great to see you again," the pastor said. "But what did the Lord say to you when you prayed about what to wear?" The farmer replied, "God said he was not familiar with your church or its pastor, and thus did not know what to suggest I wear." Ouch. Good response from the pastor. And now for our offertory and a selection from our choir. You're in for a treat. I believe our choir is going to stay up here for Song to Friends in a minute. Oh, well, it's later. Later. Sorry. I'm new. Bear with me. That's right. That's right. Blame Jesus for that, too. That's right. So I'm a relatively big Jesus fan. He's my first heroic mentor, kind of bro crush. I also believe that our relationship is basically and entirely a product of my imagination. Nonetheless, it's an important relationship. For me, Jesus matters. More than my Savior, I like to imagine him as that older, wiser kid in my imaginary neighborhood that used his cachet to help others. For me, that's Jesus. I hope that's not offensive or to the faithful or to the humanists around us. So on a whim one day, in an act I rarely ever see discussed, shocking as it may be, I thought it'd be fun to look back from our 21st century and ask the question of what he got wrong and what he got right. And when I started to ask that, my response took a couple of directions. And my first instinct was to be a little protective. I wanted to defend him from both his critics who think he's irrelevant and from his admirers who want to make him part of the godhead of a cosmic universe infinitely wide and vast. That seemed inappropriate. And from that instinct came something of a rant, one where I stood around the seated Jesus in front of me with his robes and dirty hair, and trusting that there's a warmth between us, I could feel like he would get that. So I allowed myself to imagine interrogating him really for all that others have said that he did that wasn't disclaimed. And I got into it, and in my imaginary relationship with Jesus, the only one I believe we can have, I think he would kind of dig that. So hovering about doing my best in detective impression, I have a bright light I imagine in his face, and I tell him that the real reason that his parables are so confusing is because he doesn't really know what he's talking about. And I could see myself starting to badger him about why he never said anything about why it would be okay to be. Oh no. Sorry about that. I'm going to take it. Jesus, hello. Oh, how are you? Thanks for getting back to me. Yes, of course this is private. Terrible timing, I should say, but yeah. No, don't worry about it. I know you're busy. Yeah. Well, I'm in the middle of preaching this sermon about you. No, I know I'm not the only one. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Again, of course, it's off the record. Yes, I know you're leery of being misquoted. Look, we here in the Unitarian Church, this particular one in Broadley, yep, I'm standing in the red stone one, right in the circle, yep, the stone soup one, yep, yeah, you're good, yep. Well, we have a lot of questions, lots of questions. Just to pick an easy one, just to get us started, I wanted to know what happened to the dinosaurs. A meteorite. Yeah, that's confirming, thank you. Was it part of a bigger plan? No, I'm not kidding. Okay, forget about the dinosaurs. What about the Garden of Eden? Or maybe even specifically, I think we'd like to know if you would maybe go on the record and say something positive about evolution. Yeah, evolution. Maybe you could come out and publicly suggest that there be like an addendum to the Bible, something that said that the world was billions of years old, not 6,000 or so. No, I get it. You never said anything about that. Yeah. Yeah, we do have the advantage of 2,000 years of history and technology. That's true. Yeah. Jesus, I guess in a way that's my point. No, I understand that you mostly spoke in parables. I think in hindsight, no, right, yeah. Yep. Well, I think it would have been a little clearer if you maybe said some practical stuff that would have been more helpful than stories about virgins and mustard seeds. No, I like mustard. Virgins are good too. Yep. Yeah, you're not misquoted. You're worried. I get it. Maybe what I'm saying is that we'd love if you would pass down some truth to some of your people in particular. Like, was that story about Paul on the road to Damascus, was that really you that blinded him? You got another call. It's from Rome. Yeah, I think you better take that. Hey, listen, don't be such a stranger. By the way, you're overdue for a visit. Remember, you promised you were coming back. Yeah, okay. Yeah, bye. Thanks. Okay. Don't be a stranger. Despite all you hear, he's actually really pretty hard to reach. I've lost my zest for the interrogation. You probably know that when one reads about Jesus, you're a Unitarian after all. You know that everything sort of comes from the context of his time. And when we attempt to step back through an impossibly complex layer of distance in time and what it would be like to be in first century Palestine, the first instinct one must bring to anything that we say about Jesus anywhere is a skepticism and humility that we will really never even know. We don't even really know whether Jesus existed or not, or how much of a composite he was with other folks. And when that level of scrutiny trains in on what we know, we can speak authoritatively about almost nothing. We should never forget that there's not one person who writes about Jesus in the Bible that we read who ever met him, and not only never met him, but didn't have an agenda. There are eyewitnesses to Jesus we presumably get the stories from, but not the writers. They are not them. That leads to a great game of telephone tag. And everyone had an agenda. I don't say that to refute anything that they say specifically about him, but what we know about Jesus comes from fanboys and fanzines called the Gospels. To be accurate, some of those Gospels were written by the first-hand experience of those who knew Jesus, but not eyewitness accounts. The oldest, in fact, copy of a Gospel that exists is the Gospel of Mark from 170 AD or CE, as we commonly say. 140 years after Jesus' death is the most recent document we have of a Gospel. One of the great debates in scholarship hinges on how close to the original that document and the other subsequent documents are. To be sure and to be fair, the Bible contains a few eyewitness accounts of people who felt like they saw the risen Christ. And we do know that a few of his followers came back completely into harm's way after seemingly, at least in the story, being sort of free from being immediately connected to somebody who was murdered for treason. And they did change their mind enough that history does talk about them, large numbers of them going to their death. That is truthfully the most amazing part of the Christian story. They got killed on his behalf. And so Jesus does have a little inexplicable magic to it. And I think when it comes to the Christian scriptures, here we stand on the precipice of Easter, right? Given the modern in all of us, we have to have a huge dose of humility, because the people that reportedly behaved irrationally were irrational but faithful. In the biblical accounts of Jesus, we're likely stuck with some of what Jesus actually did say, and certainly others are speaking their views of what he should have said, and we're never going to know what separates out those two things. At each turn, at each page, at each quote or phrase, one can say, well, that's not really Jesus. That's the gospel writer. That's tradition speaking. Or that is actually Jesus in what he wanted to say. Everything about that is some version of a guess. That you should digest right now if you've never done any sort of biblical criticism. Historian James Robertson states that the Gospels are theological treatises that assume the form of historical biographies. Theological treatises that assume the form of historical biographies. That's the best description I've ever heard. I would like to add that they were written by people immersed in a culture that did not have the same kind of scrutiny that we have today about what qualified as truth. Truth was blurrier then than it is now. The people who wrote the Christian scriptures, or New Testament as it's commonly known, did not ask the same kinds of questions that we do. Everything we get about Jesus is part history and certainly part the creative reworking of a classic story that people were piecing together. Here's a soundbite for you. The Gospels are detailed, biased, fact and propaganda film-filled, semi-historical documents written by authors who never met the man, had their own agendas. The Gospels and the other books are written to use the established names of people who surrounded Jesus in his time for legitimacy. And it is in these imperfect Gospels that we find out about 99% about everything we knew about Jesus and his immediate followers. Outside of two passing historical references to his movement by the Roman historian Josephus, who focused his historical studies on the Jews as a Roman, and Jesus, of course, in the Christian movement comes up, there's no other evidence that Jesus ever existed in history other than the Gospels and Scripture. The Gospels appear to be a difficult to distinguish mix of history and myth written about 35 to 85 years after Jesus' death. The Gospels were written with particular audiences or communities to influence in mind. It might be helpful to remember that the communities of Christians formed at least a little before the Gospels were written. There was movements before we get the Gospels. Paul writes the first information about the Christian movement we get. So when we look back with a fresh set of eyes, as fresh a set as we can have, we can see that what Jesus gets wrong is understandable and obvious. Jesus certainly appears to get wrong that a profoundly heavenly rule was just around the corner here on earth. He commonly refers to that as the kingdom. It's perhaps his biggest mistake. He mostly refers to the coming new age as the kingdom and describes it as a divinely conceived political reality that is something he talks about a lot. Very similar to the way a Messiah for the Jews would come and restore the dignity and power of Israel. Jesus, following some of the images and phrasing of John the Baptist, speaks of this benign change in rule and leadership that is just on the edge. This coming kingdom, we are told, is obvious for those that have ears to hear it. However, for those who don't, it is hidden like a mustard seed in the weeds. Very poetic, Jesus, beautiful even, but entirely wrong. The only historical change on earth following his life was more brutal Roman rule for about 3 or 4 more centuries. The idea that such a change was coming, as we know from the number of apocalyptic thinkers found in and around the Jesus movement and every generation since, is that Jesus didn't get it right. However, in Jesus' day, that kind of thinking was not tempered by the reason of science and history we have now. Of all the things Jesus left behind, the idea that we would know that there was a magically, supernaturally driven close to the world is the worst legacy attributed to him. It creates apocalyptic, dangerous thought, and that resides in our politics today. Jesus simply and ironically gets wrong, not that his band of traveling healers and odd collection of followers would change the future. They absolutely did. Jesus' followers unquestionably changed the future in amazing ways. Jesus could arguably be the most important figure in history. The Jesus we inherit from Paul, largely at least, makes him not the most important person in history. Pretty close. However, he gets wrong, almost radically, comically wrong, that they would change the world by ushering in a new kingdom rooted in love. The kingdom never comes. There was never that radically new order that would change people's minds or eyes. No avenging God or profound revolution topped civilization or ushered in a profoundly new human nature, did it? No. However, Jesus did change the world. We know I don't know if it's more insulting or respectful for the Roman Empire to have taken the man they killed 3 centuries before and make him the religious centerpiece of an empire that was entering Europe and beyond. But that is exactly the move they did, and that is exactly why we're talking about Jesus today. I don't know if it's insult to the Roman Empire, but they built the very church off the person they crucified and nearly founded the centerpiece of the religion on the spot that they crucified him. How ironic is that? Why is that never discussed? It is quite ironically the powers and principalities that was such an underlying source of trouble for this itinerant preacher who wanted to purge Jerusalem and the surroundings from them that carry his favor forward. It's just weird. Once you take off the reinterpretive glasses we've been handed from endless 2,000 years of church apologetics, it's just ironic that it's not discussed more. What we get wrong is the other side of the coin, and it's so obvious that it's difficult to say it creatively. We get seduced by the idea that any person who was alive at this moment exactly 2,000 years ago can better solve the problems of our era than we can. I think had Jesus ever come back as he promised he would have been disappointed in us for making him an icon, particularly as a Jew who rejected the idea of deifying God. In Jesus, we commit the understandable and very tempting sin of seeking salvation outside of ourselves and the moral complications of the very here and now and placing them on a historical figure. How responsible Jesus should be for that, for leading us to believe that he was whispering in the ear of world leaders 2 millennia later, or having his image in cookies and clouds, we'll never know. How responsible he is for that, we can't say. If any of his words are that way, I would call him at least a little irresponsible. Jesus might have seen himself as special, maybe even when alive, dropped enough hints to get humans to officially suggest that he was divine. We will never know. We will never know how much of that is him or a propaganda campaign from another voice or another pen. If Jesus had the cosmic perspective that almost exactly 3 centuries following his death, he would have probably straightened a few things out. Wouldn't someone with the scope of wisdom that he is inevitably attributed to having had being placed at the hand of God said some things that he would have really helped? Jesus gives us no heads up on the moral issues headed our way. He does not tell us how to cure cancer. He does not drop any hints that there were 2 massive continents unknown to us roughly 5,000 miles to the west of Israel. That would have been helpful. He doesn't tell us anything about how we should manage the challenges of choice or abortion or anything. Think about it. If Jesus was all we say he was, wouldn't he have said something about dinosaurs, germs, or DNA? Of course he would. Now you got me preaching. Go ask a fundamentalist. Wouldn't someone who truly was, as a Trinitarian church gospel suggests, present with God at the point of creation when he came down to earth, say some more helpful things than craftily critiquing the leaders of his tiny little region? Of course he would. And that's not even getting into the promises that he didn't keep. He promised, didn't he, that he would return before the generation of his peers had died, and he doesn't. Instead of sharing with us how germs work or tipping off those about the continents, Jesus delivers demons haunting a person's psyche into the pack of pigs and then proceeds to drown them in the water. Jesus gets a lot wrong. Of course he did. He was around before we invented shoes that fitted differently to our left and right feet, and the practical use of buttons were placed on clothes. And while I'm on a roll, isn't the promise that God is watching over us so diligently that he, by all accounts, for every hair on our head? Isn't that a misleading and religious bit of romantic poetry that we have a hard time giving up? I say this only because I care. It remains unclear how indictable Jesus is for all of what was said about him and claimed. It is and will remain permanently unclear where he is misquoted and where blurry language or ego makes him an accessory to this crime. We can only say that we don't know. I think the reason we get Jesus wrong is because at least the Jesus we get gets so much right about how to live bravely, but also compassionately and indignantly, that we get a little dreamy and seduced by his nature. And that is not a bad thing. See, it seems to me that at the level of existence, of spiritual evolution that we have as creatures, existentially challenged by death and limited by 1,000 different variables, it is literally beyond our capacity to apprehend what is ultimately true accurately. Except for perhaps rare glimpses and of intuition, we get very little hard truth about what is divine and what is not. So I would encourage us all to reject the perfection and the halos that we've handed to Jesus. Go for it. Probably all of us or most of us have done that already. But don't hesitate to occasionally, particularly around this time of year, sink yourself into his story a little. Embrace him as a courageous friend. Invite him to sit at an ever-growing spiritual table of heroes and heroines who you listen to. Rumor has it, he would do the same for you. If not a Messiah, make him your patron saint for living outside false boundaries, of living bravely with no assurance of victory. As a figure who faced death in all its uncertainty and tragically sort of never gave up on the world. I'm sure he'd love to have you at his table. Surely he's a first century guy, so if you're a woman, he might, despite his IQ or EQ, expect you to cook. But if we know anything, unless you're a snotty prima donna, according to the records, he occasionally wants to sit and listen to what you have to say. I encourage you to forgive Jesus for all he gets wrong. Rumor has it, he would do the same for you. Amen. Now, we sing, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again, number 61, and join our surprisingly good choir. Now, join them, 61. I don't mean surprising in a bad way, I mean, in a good way. Now time in our service for the sharing of joys and concerns. We have people who will pass the mic around. I can help with that as well, and those who will light the candle. This is a time for sharing non-political, generally, personal, and it's also a time to welcome visitors as well.
Hi, I'm Kirsten. Oh, it's loud. Yeah, I don't need this anyway. I just want to say, I did that perfectly in rehearsal the whole time, and then in front of all of you, I cried. I want to celebrate that we're singing again.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 years and none of that has been really, really hard. And I just want to say this was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, true.
Hi everyone, I'm Essie Chambers. I'm Molly Chambers' daughter, and I just wanted to say how happy I am. I grew up in this church, so I've been coming here since I'm 51, so this is the first church that I ever. It's my home. It's my church home. So I'm just really happy to be here. Very proud to be this one's daughter, and to see all of you. I've seen you on Zoom before, but many of you not in real life. So I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, Essie. Yeah.
Yeah. Woo, yeah.
My name is Owen Kennedy, and this is the second time that Cindy and I have been here. Feel just as happy today as last time to be among all of you. And I just want to say that was a really cool sermon. And,
Thanks.
It just resonates really strongly with my own feelings and beliefs. And, I went to missionary school in India. I went to missionary school in India in 1970. And drank deeply from the well of Christianity and Jesus, and he's been with me ever since, But yes, I really appreciate all those lovely questions that you asked, and I thank you.
We need heroes. He's a good one.
Good morning, I'm Rob, and would you please light a candle of joy to have you, Rocky, be back bringing this microphone to all of us. It feels like a nice return to something that was a natural rhythm of our congregation. And a candle of hope for my beloved daughter, Jez, who fell and broke her arm.
Ooh.
One surgeon said she needed surgery. The next surgeon said maybe a cast would immobilize the bones and they would seal and she'd be okay. And out of her great relief to take the second opinion, she fell a second time. But apparently did not make it a bigger fracture, and so hopefully did not snatch surgery from the jaws of victory.
I'm Pam, and I just want to thank Essie for her amazing film, which we were able to watch at the Garden Theater yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And then for her ability to answer questions back and forth for people from all over the theater. And she's touring. And this is such an opportunity to look at how we build relationships across race, but also across class, across gender. We have all of those isms to think about, all of those identity groups. And any one of us could be harnessed, you could say, in this slave ship, because we sort of are. We sort of are environmentally, if not any other way.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I just want to welcome us, the people on Zoom. I wonder, Frank, how many people are on Zoom. We've got a good crowd here in the sanctuary. 7 cameras? 7 people. Welcome, people on Zoom.
Thank you, Kate.
Hi, I'm Sandra, and I also want to honor Essie in the film yesterday. I think the most powerful part for me was just looking so closely into so many faces. This idea that proximity is what's going to make a change, and you gave me such proximity. Just totally breathed it in and appreciated it, and it was a gift. So thank you. And being a graduate of Princeton Seminary myself, I just appreciate the humor, the lightness, the telephone, and I guess looking into history isn't where we're going to find the guidance. And I think one of the things I love about the whole story of Jesus and his life and all the followers and all the following events, I loved how you balanced. They killed him and then they built their empire on his his truth. But I most appreciate the mystery of Jesus. And I'm glad that the Bible wasn't written by people who knew him. Because that allows us to participate in the story of who Jesus was. And that means a lot to me, to just be in the mystery together. And what do you see? And what do I see? And how do we create meaning? So I really appreciate the open-endedness and the humor of your sermon.
Would you light a candle of I'm Dan. Would you please light a candle of concern for my friend Nisi, who has developed a rare blood disorder and is going to be in the hospital for 3 weeks getting chemotherapy followed by a bone marrow transplant.
Good morning, folks. My name is Bill Ashley. Well, Monday morning at about 8 o'clock, I was lying comfortably on a gurney in the emergency room locally, which turned out to be the very best place to be because I suffered a stroke for about 2 minutes, short strokes, first to my knowledge. Subsequent tumult, they went through the routines, and the MRI scan disclosed that I'd had 7 or 8 earlier than that I didn't even know about. So my statin has been boosted, and I've become very fond of baby aspirins, and otherwise onward and upward.
Hi everybody, my name is Nancy and this is the first time I've been here.
Oh.
And I have to say, during your talk I sat here in shock. Because I was brought up as a strict Catholic, which I have, gotten away from, of course. I really like the idea of All Souls because you talk a lot about prejudice, racism, judgment, and I think that that's something that we need to practice on a daily basis is, try not to go there with the judgment. I think that some Catholics may even call it, I hope I don't offend anybody, but sacrilegious is a word that I thought of.
Yeah.
That's usually that's usually the reaction. Oh my God, I can't believe he's saying that. But I definitely, appreciate the honesty because I think that that's been a lot of our struggles. I know you talked about, the mystery of Jesus, and I don't think that's okay with a lot of us. I think that we don't want the mystery, you know, we want to know. So
Sure.
I definitely appreciate your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, yeah.
You're welcome back now here.
Morning, church. Annie here. So let me see, I have some candles of concern. One is for my good friend, a lot of people know him, Danny Botkin. Wonderful, stable, organic gardener who's given so much to our community. He's dealing with something that the doctors haven't been able to figure out, so I've had a little chat with him. So that's one, Danny Botkin. Another one is my friend Amy, who's dealing with some kind of really intense cancer, but I met her, it was 50-50, now it's going more 70-30. Keep it going, Amy. And I had such joy last night. I went to the Coop concert, 14, 15 people, a lot of people, and a candle for the light and the joy and upliftment that those people and music brings to our life. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Coop Concert.
We light one final candle for all that remains unsaid. I think about the people who don't have a community like this to share their lives with and all the trouble humans can face. Thanks. We're going to sing Prayer to Friends, which if you open your hymnal, it's right, should be right there, pasted on the inside. Please stand in body and or spirit, and always sit, please don't stand, and sit and sing.
It's okay, you're not Jesus.
That's true. Carolyn McDade also wrote Spirit of Life. So, there we are. Find a still spot. Drop down into. One of the things that Jesus is thought to have discouraged is grandstanding prayer. Whenever you pray, he is recorded as saying, do not be like the hypocrites who love to stand and pray at the street corners so they might be seen. Whenever you pray, Jesus said, go into your room and shut the door. I love that. However, public grandstanding is only a problem if you're praying to impress people, and that is hardly our issue here. I've always wondered if Jesus' advice to UUs might be for us to, when inspired, actually pray publicly. Because for us, that would be as hard as it might be not to. And so we do, at least today. Broad-minded, non-discriminatory spirit we know in love, spirit we can see alive in selfless acts, be with us. Animate our souls collectively with power and good intentions and love. Breathe compassion into our lives to savor this life we are living and the planet we live on. Let's work to be as comfortable expressing our deep felt wishes and truths in public as we are doubting where they may be headed. Amen. Emperor Julian of Rome, laying on his deathbed, as he died about his failure, he attempted to reverse the Roman Empire's choice to adopt Christianity as its state religion. His final words were, "You have won, O Galilean." And we go forth with the call of Jesus to be courageous and compassionate and in all those ways. Amen. Don't give up, Kit. You'll eventually get that. That's right. You got potential.
Quick announcements.
Preston? So, you guys need a second, that's fine, I just want to make a general announcement, but you can finish your conversation. We're good? Okay. So where else on a single Sunday could you see a person in the pulpit have cell reception with Jesus, a resurrected choir, and amazing miracles on the piano, and a chance to stay afterwards and think of how we can grow this amazing church and really be able to reach more people with the kind of magic that we all experienced here today. Okay, I'll speak for myself. Well, the magic that I experienced here today, but I believe passionately that we are on a path that could lead to something that would be a real gift for ourselves and to our community. And it would mean a lot to me personally if people could stick around afterwards and help us do a little collaborative, creative brainstorming to think of how we can go forward. Good question. Is that possible, Dan? Can we include the folks on Zoom in the brainstorm? And can we figure out a way to get them the food electronically?
Move that screen over there so they'll be right in the room with us. And I want to heartily encourage everybody to take a bio break, a quick bio break. But we have excellent snacks, coffee, decaf, tea. So run downstairs to the bathroom if you need to. Grab a plate of food and come back so we can get started soon. Where do we sit in one place? Yeah, let's sit all way up front because we might have to share the mic. We will share the mic.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. Keep bringing me back.
I think it's the first time I've ever served interrupted by. Yeah, the phone thing really was
That's
there.
kind of, it's cute,
I
isn't
was
it?
hoping you would bring it back.
No, it's a good idea.
Next time you do it, bring it back.
That's true.
Just listen to me.
I do. Oh yeah, it's a good gimmick, right?
Yeah, but I actually talking about like whatever you're doing, create.
Hold on to the pulpit, don't fall.
I always go through this thing with people.
It's true. And the order is actually not that far off. If I, you know what I mean? Like it's light and it's this. It's not like it's humans and then it's turtles. I think there's some level of order. I mean, it would make sense. You'd see like a placebo is gonna, an amoeba is gonna come before us. Yeah. 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 Well, it's a weird story. It's a weird story to live in, isn't it? I mean, yeah. Cool. Thanks for running Zoom. Yeah. What's that?
I have copies of a remarkable book called Mini Forest Revolution.
You should use the mic. There's copies of the sermon out back. There's 3 small printed copies of that if anybody's interested. And here's Pam.
And there's copies of the Mini Forest Revolution I'm taking orders for. It's the creation of mini forests for carbon sequestration.
More than international. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. I'll try to keep it fun. Okay, good. No,
I don't care. I'm just gonna add some more oil to
why.
What is this brainstorming meeting ideas?
Let's get started, guys, because we really want to get out of here by 1. Let's go. Come on in. We are on Zoom, and we got some folks on Zoom,
Did I spell congregation right?
and we've got a little agenda. So come, please, if you could, sit in the first 4 rows, because we are going to be sharing a mic. Anywhere. 4 rows.
I don't know, did I?
Rob is one of our first speakers, so we're hoping he'll show up.
Where is this Rob? Okay. Anybody seen this Rob? I don't know where he is.
So as people are settling in, I just want to say that this this is an idea that membership had to gather us together to reimagine. I got the UU World yesterday, and the title is Reimagining. So let's think about how we can grow the church, how we can grow the community. I would use that word as much as the word church. And I think another focus is trying to get more younger people. And so I think we're starting with the next item is the covenant. And Rob, if anybody has that insert, that would be useful. This one? Yeah.
Does somebody need it up front? Yeah.
Is this?
This?
Yeah.
One that, yeah.
Oh, you got a basketball.
I don't, it's not,
Tell
full.
me when
Some of
you
them
have
are,
it.
some of them just say this. All the orders of worship were used.
All right, so I deliberately cherry-picked 4 lines from our 9-line covenant.
Rob, can you step down because you're not on the camera?
Is this better?
Yes.
And so, you know, we always say, in this house we covenant with one another. And sometimes I just want to pause in between the lines and try to reflect on what is the larger implication. And so I invite you, as I say each line, to take a moment to just think about how it might be especially pertinent to our purpose here today. To communicate with kindness and support, and to serve with compassion and commitment. Steve mentioned several times that the parts that Jesus got right were to be courageous and also to be compassionate. What would it mean for us moving forward? To really tap our courage and at the same time really be kind to each other. What does it mean to communicate with kindness and support? I'll give you a first-hand example. The other day, after Essie's remember what words you used, Mom. But I know this, in that moment, I felt seen and valued and loved. And if we can do that for each other, then I think that's a big part of really living up to our covenant. The second of the 4 lines I picked out are to listen respectfully and value our diversity as a source of our collective strength. I think at our best we do listen respectfully, even when we think someone is on the pulpit saying something sacrilegious. I think it's part of our strength that there's the person who's speaking to you right now is Jewish, and that there's people in the audience who are from lots of different faiths and backgrounds. And the more we broaden that diversity, the more we increase our collective strength. To learn and grow together, generously sharing our time, talents, and treasures. You know, in that very first line, to serve with compassion and commitment. I won't sugarcoat this. You want to know what our board consists of? This whole big, beautiful sanctuary? Want to know who's trying to pilot it? It's me and Nancy, along with the 2 sort of official officers, David as treasurer and Kirsten as clerk. I'm sorry, and Link, thank you. The missing link. Oh no, I'm not saying that there aren't plenty of other people who play key roles, but I am saying that if we want to grow, people need to be generous with their time and with their commitment. And lastly, to celebrate the joys of discovery, from the wonder of youth to the wisdom of age. We don't have enough youth in this congregation, and it may be that that's just who we are, and we'll hopefully, gracefully age out together. But it's also possible that we can reach out and we can offer things that people in a younger generation will find relevant and will want to come and will want to hopefully bring their families. And it won't be just Essie who says that as a girl she was raised in this congregation. I'll give you my final illustration. As some of you saw, in her sling, my 30-year-old daughter joined me at the Garden Cinema to sit at a table afterwards to try to encourage people to see the link between Essie's film and social justice and progressive reforms and a lot of what we're trying to do here in our congregation. And she said, "Dad, young people are not going to want to give somebody else more reasons to contact them through email. We have to think about this more creatively." She said, "I have a service dog. We'll bring our dog to the movie theater and we'll put up a sign that says, 'Social Justice Service Dog. Free kisses for freedom fighters.'" And it was just enough of a grabber that some younger people actually pet the dog, let Ellie lick their fingers, and then signed up. And as a result, this is the father's email alert list, 4 or 5 names. And this is the daughter's email alert list, easily double the number of names. And the whole point is, if we can get some of that wisdom of age and wonder of youth, there's a lot of synergy that we can create that can be part of how we help to grow this congregation. So I'm going to, at this point, maybe, Kate, was there something else you wanted me to share?
I wanted you to give an update
I didn't want to do a boring report. I tried to make this more enlivening and uplifting.
Brainstorming, creative idea thing. I don't want to get bogged down.
Yeah. So I basically, the board report is that the board, I think I can speak for David and Nancy, is feeling a little bit like we need some reinforcements. We're trying to do an awful lot of things, but it's hard to do it. And that whole saying that many hands makes light work, well, the inverse of that is very few hands makes a lot of heavy lifting. So I think the idea now is to try to see if we can think together of all the ways in which we can tap some of our current resources and build on those, and then maybe think about some things that are new and fresh and maybe a little bit outside the briefcase that we can begin to consider as well.
I would like David to say brief words.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Levitt. From time to time, I have acted as treasurer, assistant treasurer, money collector. I don't know what many other roles. I'm on worship, I'm on membership, I'm part of the choir. And one of the things, pardon me? Property committee, thank you. Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to share with you all is that we will be starting our pledge drive towards our next upcoming fiscal year. And the purpose of this meeting today is not because we are financially insolvent and that we can't pay our bills. That's not the case. We can pay our bills. We have money in the bank. Another fiscal year will be starting July 1st, and we'll be looking for you to make some contribution or pledge towards the fiscal year ongoing, primarily as part of your desire to see our growth, to see our future, that you want to be part of this. We don't have a specific dogma that we make you follow, and you're by rote going to say these things to some entity. We're very welcoming. We're open. We're happy to have youth and infants, regardless of what noise they wish to share. Gosh, even individuals with service animals are welcome. Pagans, Wiccans. I mean, we reach the gambit of a variety because we are all inclusive. We're looking to get a collective group of individuals that choose to be part of a group that like to be together and participate and do things together. Many of us have been here for a number of years, and we know each other by name. We see your faces in town. We see you in the congregation, and we're thinking, there's got to be more of us. Where are you all? What do we need to do? Should we be reaching out through the newspaper as we're approaching our 200th or 250th? 200th anniversary of this facility. The congregation goes back even further than that, and they decided that they wanted to have this piece of land and this space and build something for the people that were like-minded of the same sort to do something together in a place. And here we are today, and we have seen the congregation size grow to where every pew was filled to now we're looking at it like, is there something that we're doing wrong? Is there something that we're doing right, but we're just not getting it out there to you all or to the others? We've thought, hey, speak to one of your friends, your neighbors, and say, why don't you come with us on Sunday? We don't know that right thing to do. And that's pretty much the basis of today. What can we do to get our word out to have more people see how valued and important and worthwhile each of us all are and this place that we look to share with? Thank you.
So I've got 4 questions. I'm going to simplify and go to just 3. We have gifts here. David's expressed a lot of these gifts. Rob has. How can we build on these gifts in a way that helps us grow the congregation? Sandra and Christine are going to alternate writing things down. Hopefully we'll have some rapid fire good ideas about the gifts that we have here and how we're going to build on them. And let me just read the next question too, so that this might inspire you as much. What are additional approaches we can take, and what are we willing to change in order to make this growth a reality? And then the last very important question is, what are you willing to do to make our community strong and help all souls thrive? So it's great to say we should, but I want to say I will. So, who's got a good idea? Pam.
Yeah, I can start because I've been working on something now for maybe a couple of months. So, I have a history. I was a social justice empowerment trainer for 17 years. So I've been outreach to a lot of churches. And I worked on economic justice as the staff member for the little grassroots group, UUJEC. So what I know is that there are more UU churches in the state of Massachusetts than any other state in the country, 140. And that we are forging a new path where it comes to climate change. And included in that is diversity. There's a real path to building a diverse workforce that is really well paid. So I grappled because I worked on finance, green banks, all kinds of things for the last 10 years. But right now, the thing that I can see is that we are right up against the margin on climate change. And I can tell you, because I attended the last session at the Episcopal Church, which has a good green team, and they had young people speaking passionately about where they started their work when they were only like 8 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old. And one of them is planting trees twice a week, a young man, Julian. Why trees? Because trees pull the carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it into the ground. So what I'm doing is I'm working with Dave Jackie, who wrote this tome called Edible Forest Gardens, and he's been reading and catching up on a book called The Mini Forest Revolution, which is extremely inspiring about seeding forests. You have to pick up a piece of paper over there that shows that a very large tree, at least 100 years old, is worth hundreds of tiny trees. Most people don't grasp that. That if you plant a tree now, it's going to be 100 years before it's putting 50% of the carbon that 400 baby trees do, okay? I'm finishing. So the point is that could we help seed in the green sanctuary churches? 80% of the churches in the state are green sanctuary churches. Could we help, because we have a good guide, could we help seed mini forests? They then, once after they have 3 years of work, they expand by themselves. And what I want to say is, I believe that you will find that young adults will join this, and we can make it fun. Music. We can get Annie leading singing. We can make it fun, and we can also address elders, because what keeps a tree alive and makes it so that the foresters don't cut them down? Memorial gardens. How about memorial gardens? We help build memorial gardens around churches. We can lead a statewide thing in with that. I'm working on it. I write grant proposals, and that's my next task.
Thanks, Pam. Tom.
I was thinking the music today was really wonderful, but I was thinking that various kinds of music might be attractive too, to bring in younger people perhaps, or people have different musical taste. And that's all. I was just thinking, wow, would it be nice to hear some Latin music or some Irish music or some other type to go along with the service that would be maybe bring in some other people.
Good idea. Tina.
That brings me to when I started coming here was because of the open mics that we would have and a performer on the, was it Coffee and Soul? Coffee and Soul. And I read the little poster we had of treat others how we want to be treated, and it was all in different religions, and that's when I started wanting to come to this church with my two kids. It was, the attraction was the music, and that's what's having me come back next Friday for the open mic and open my guitar based on a resident who we lost who was a singer, and I said, that's a reason I need to open up that guitar again.
Thank you, Tina. I just want to spring from that. So Stone Soup is having an open mic next Friday night in our sanctuary. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to appreciate, to celebrate, to embrace Stone Soup while they're still here. And they've got a lot of energy, that Stone Soup. Kirsten's not here right now, but we know she's got a lot of energy, she's got a lot of people. If we can bring more of the Stone Soup folks up on Sunday, and we embrace Stone Soup, like come to the open mic. It's also, like adopt the open mic, adopt more of the stuff that Stone Soup does. The Spanish hour once a month is up here in our sanctuary. We should be glad to be sharing the space and get some acceleration from Stone Soup. Who else? Ellen.
Hi, so actually I have to admit this is not something I can do, but I notice outside we have a sign that tells you when our service is, and it's also child education, which we don't do anymore. And I wondered if we want to consider that as part of what we offer, because that doesn't just bring children, it brings families. And we're coming out of a pandemic, and I think probably at least part of why, we have a little less people in our pews is because people just got used to, not going places where there are people. So we need to encourage them. I love the idea of music. I would offer an idea of music, but all I can think of is music. I don't know what to say beyond that. I think an open mic night is a great idea. And maybe, offer once in a while a music event where we invite somebody or a band or something to come in and perform, not on Sunday, but on a Friday evening. And I'm happy to help advertise it. I don't think I can participate, but, organize it, I don't know. Whatever, I'm willing to help with things, but I think we could do some outreach and let it be appropriate to the church. So it isn't just some band that it's, that's popular, but it's some musical people who would like to come and perform in a UU church and sing songs that relate to what we believe in. So that would be my thought.
Great. I do want to say that we really appreciated that Kay had volunteered to do RE for the first 3-4 months of this church year, and I think had one person come. So there's got to be a different way of doing it than just welcoming people of all ages. Sandra.
I'm interested in offering some kind of a spiritual exploration group that might meet just once a month for a couple of hours at a time that the people choose, and use the newspaper to announce it, and even maybe see if we could put a monthly invitation in, like what the focus of the group might be for that month. That answers the question so many people have of, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to believe anymore. I know what I don't believe, but I don't know what I do believe. And I think I would be very interested in facilitating a group that says, well, given what you're believing now, why do you believe that? And what can you share with other people about how you arrived at that? And if you don't know what you believe, why not? Like, why are you holding back from that edge out of safety or out of confusion, but being a support for each other around facing the question of why are we here and what is the purpose?
Thank you, Sandra. Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I hate to talk, and so you'll have to forgive me, and probably... See, I can't even hold the mic right. But as I said, I'm Nancy. I hate to talk. I can't hold the mic right. But I wanted to bounce off on an idea I had while Pam was speaking. And I think we should have a poster contest for children, so that the children would have a plant a tree contest. We could get the information out to the schools, and I mean all Franklin County involved, not just Greenfield. Get the information out, and we'd have categories like up to 6 years old, 6 to 9, 10 to 13, 13 to 18, or something like that. And we'd have this contest. We'd have a date for them to submit their posters, and we'd have a crew to evaluate them. We'd give 3 prizes in each age group. The prizes, of course, Tom, would be trees, and I'm sure that I could dig up a few flowering quince at my house for one of the prizes, and we could go around and steal trees different places for the other prizes, and that wouldn't be a big problem. But we'd get on a Sunday, we'd have the grand announcements of the winners, and all of the families would have to come in support of their children, of course, because they'd want to come and see their children get their prize. And the children would all be excited about getting their prize and having their posters seen. And we could do this. And it wouldn't take very much. It would just take a little bit of creativity, a few flyers to be printed up, getting them out to the schools, and then having the due date and the contest winners and so on. And that's my idea. So we bring all these families into the church and hopefully get them hooked to come back for another Sunday. That's it. And they would have, and each child, or the 3 winners, would have a tree to take home and plant.
Well said.
Great idea. Thanks, Nancy. My name's Russ. If you don't know me, you probably do. I think one of the problems that All Souls has right now for getting the word out to people in the area about that we're here is the fact that the Greenfield Recorder no longer on Saturday lists church services. They feature something about one church or preacher in the area. And as far as I know, we haven't reached out to them to do anything about us. But as far as regular services, they're not doing that anymore. So I'm thinking to myself, how do we get the word out to the general community that we're here, besides the fact that you can see us on Main Street, we're very visible, but who we are and, you know, what we do or what we don't do. I forgot to ask a woman who was here for the first time today how she heard about us. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Dan.
Christine, can I mute herself? We have a comment.
Are you done?
I guess so. I don't know. I can go.
So spreading the word through media. Christine has her hand up. Let's find out what Christine thinks. Please unmute, Christine.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Ooh.
Okay. So a couple of things, because families have changed through time, and people have fewer children and more pets. A couple of things occur to me, and something that I'm willing to do is hold a blessing of the pets service, because our pets are our family. I also think this movement towards encouraging young people in their passion for green is wonderful, and maybe I would be willing to help visualize a free summer camp for local kids for a week that we could do somehow coordinate. I don't know. I'm willing to talk to people about that. It's something that I do in my professional life, and willing to give a week of my life to help create that. Agriculture is very, 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 very near and dear to the heart of this area, and taking our blessings on the road and perhaps asking to do a blessing of the teams at the large animal pools at the fairgrounds. Just thinking about how amazing and rare these animals are becoming, and how farmers are so integral, and how horses did create the very beginnings of the United States society as it is, and figure into a good portion of Native American culture in at least the Plains states. And kind of circling back around to children and trees, and thinking about how lovely it would be for us to sponsor mini forests at our local public schools. If we wanted places to do these things, that there was a longevitous way to connect with them. Again, I work at a public school. I know a place where children can be found, and access to land to plant trees, and ways to interface. I even have work for some young people who might, or old people, or medium-sized people, whatever, who might be interested in doing some of this work with children. However, the idea that we do things out in the community that are, very deeply in touch with our beliefs is a way to be seen and to draw people in the active way. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That was a plethora of good ideas. Rob.
So I want to follow up on what David and Russ were bringing out. I feel like one of our systemic challenges is getting the word out, and I would love to hear ideas from everybody who can think of something beyond sort of what we've been currently doing. So what we've been currently doing is we publish a newsletter, we put out emails, we try periodically to get something in the local press. Not even sure if there's more than that we're doing, but I bet there are other possibilities, and that's what the beauty of a brainstorm is, if somebody can think of some other ways that we could get the word out.
I got an
Okay.
idea. All right, 30 years ago. Okay, 30 years ago, when I was having my kids at Franklin Hospital, they gave every new mother a bag, and in that bag was all these publications, coupons, information about preschools, da-da-da-da. Well, that would be a good place to stick in a flyer about UU, and because that's when parents start to think like, oh, I'm okay not going to a church, but I really want to give my child some ground from which to grow. Not, saying they have to be that way, but just some base from which they can learn about all the spiritual stuff. So anyway, tap into any agencies where new parents are getting information, and then have our information there about this possibility of raising your child in the UU church, because it wouldn't be aggressive, but it would be informative, and who knows, it might reach a few people that wouldn't have heard about us. Preschools, that sort of thing.
I want to add Facebook. We had a wonderful, Jen was pretty good on the Facebook. I've tried to do Facebook. I'm failing. I want someone to help me do Facebook. Yeah.
I really love this conversation about how we're going to grow a deep bench. That's an old sports adage, but it makes so much sense. That we have a first ring, which is the board, and then the next bench are the field players, and then the next bench is, of course, the managers and the administrators. We need like a nice deep bench of people who are in on this. My response to the messaging, you may have noticed that there's several congregations in this town that have gone digital. And it would be fabulous for people to see our principled faith digitized outside with the fireworks and the confetti and all of that, in order for them to be thinking about just what you just said, Christine. To plant the seed about, it's not just about me, but my family needs to go to church, or we need a church community. And what you also know is that our HRs of business, not-for-profits, corporations, the human resource folks have gone to DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, actually access as well. And therefore, our faith principles have already been there since the 60s in DEI. How many times have we seen a woman come into this congregation, and by the 6th time that she's really involved in a conversation with us, she goes, I really didn't understand that you were going to treat women equally. That doesn't happen in all the congregations. They're fielded to the kitchen, they're supposed to bring goodies, they're supposed to be second hands. And when women come here, they're like, oh, you mean I could be on the board, or I could do the membership committee, or I could choose what I want to do and how I want to do it. So we have a DEI that's very strong, and I think that's one of the messages we could really do. And my response, Sandra, about workshops, I love that. If anyone wants to go to uua.org, it's a thick, robust set of instruction, invitations, and curriculum that actually has to do with the spiritual self. So we don't even have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to take those pieces from the uua.org, call our regional staff people who are to support us, and it can happen. So I'm just charged up about this conversation. Thanks.
Kate, what did you mean about digitizing us? Did you mean about putting a new, I'm sorry? So in other words, replacing what we've got in front of the...
Keep the wayside pulpit, that's not a problem, but make the wayside pulpit, the second one, that's digitized, flat screen.
That's eye-catching, that's got movement.
There's about 3
Yeah.
congregations I noticed in town
Yeah.
that already do outside, wayside, digital.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just wanted clarification. And I want to follow up on what Kate was saying about with Stone Soup. Stone Soup is what brings more people into this building on a consistent basis every week. And so whatever we can do to get the word out to them, to say, we got services up here on Sunday morning, or, you know, I mean, there's an immediate audience.
Hi, I just moved to Greenfield a year and a half ago, but I feel like I just moved here last month. Let's see. What do I wanted to say? Posters. Just like the good old days, like a big colorful poster outside inviting people for whatever we're offering. I'm one of those people that even when I go shopping around town, I look for, what's on those boards to find out what's available in the community. I think people still do that. So that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to say is parental support. There's so much going on politically around transgendered children, around banned books, around all of the social justice issues, as well as climate change. And there's many different areas of climate change. One is animal species and extinction, what we already have lost to what we could lose. But I think to get everything going is, who are these committees? Who's going to do the work? I'm ready to jump on some committee. But I think first, after we have all this information, is what kind of committees do we want to form? Who's going to head those committees, and how we're going to move into action. I'm excited about it. This is a beautiful church, and Stone Soup is a wonderful resource, and music. We could have folk concerts here, and people will know our church and get to know us when they come. We can wear little pins that say, "This is my church." Anyway, all kinds of.
Thank you, Maria. I'm going to go for Bill, who hasn't spoken yet.
I'm Bill Ashley. I'm active in the food pantry, food bank circuit around here. And I've noticed that one of the leaders in this area has managed to cultivate a particular reporter at the Recorder quite a lot. And I think the degree of coverage of what active groups are doing depends on some individual skill there. She is the Franklin County Community Meals Program head. Her name is Rachel Berggren. And I don't know what her technique is, but she has cultivated, she gets more than her share of press, and it's always the same reporter. I hope I'm being heard. I'm not hurling it up properly. I'm mystified how this is done, but it is done. You can get more than your share of Recorder attention.
Ellen, did you have a question?
I wanted to follow up with what Russ said about the paper. I wasn't aware of that, but I think at the very least, and I'd be glad to do this, we need to reach out to them and ask them, do they need us to submit something every week, or why, or at least question why they're not covering it anymore.
They canceled about 6-8 months ago all Faith Matters except for that one blurb. So all the churches that were submitting every week, which were primarily UU churches in the area, but other churches too. So unfortunately, it's because of staffing and time, something like that. Because, what a big, hearty newspaper it is.
Hi. Would it help if I stood up? Okay. And take my mask off and give you my teacher voice. Hi, I'm Kim. I just found out that this is my neighbor. This is so awesome. It's like not only are we in the same church, but we're in the same neighborhood. I wanted to add Instagram to the social media list, and also Meetup. And I have to tell you honestly, I've been here about a year and a half. I never read the Greenfield Recorder. I could care less. I don't get any of my news from there. And if I want to know what's going on locally, I don't look there. But I do look on Facebook to see what kinds of events are happening in the area. I do searches just through Google. Events, Greenfield, to see what comes up. And
Kim, if you were very new to the area, where would you look?
Online.
To find a church? Specifically.
Well, since I'm a UU, by long-standing tradition, I go to the UUA and see where the UU congregation is. Because I'm a UU. But if I weren't specifically looking for a UU, I would be looking for events online or on Facebook to see what was available in the area. So there's two separate problems here. One is just awareness of people about us as UUs who don't already know. And I think that's the much harder audience. The people who are UUs who move here know that they want to find UUs, will find you. That's not a problem. But the awareness is a big problem, and young people, I'm pretty sure, don't read the recorder. You know, the kids at Greenfield Community College don't read the recorder. You know, so how do we reach people like that? The meetup thing is really interesting because, you know, people are looking for things to do, and so they might find a meetup group, and if they met here and they were doing something related to something that we're interested in, like a social justice thing or an environmental thing, that would be a way to get people who are interested in actively doing things to be in our space.
Hi, I have a question about how do people find the UU Church? So let's take the scenario of a victim of one of the churches that's sometimes in the news. So let's take a victim's point of view and say, well, I'm a victim of this church, but I really feel as though I need some kind of spiritual thing. And how would someone in that category find All Souls? How would they find a UU church to attend? So question is, how would just a random person come to UU?
So I think marketing is the magic word, and pretty soon what we should do is maybe I would love to get a marketing committee out of this meeting, and maybe a tree having fun with trees group out of this meeting. But Tina.
One of the things I was thinking of is something as simple as a seed packet and having pasted on the back like a quick description of the UU and the All Souls services, or some quick message. And I don't know, I'm kind of thinking relating to our flower ceremony or something like that, where that would get attention from families because their kids would want that seed packet. Or even maybe a single pansy plant, sort of outside at the front, and get a hold of people just passing by, and then just put that little seed in their brain.
Are you thinking like Sunday morning or Saturday morning, or?
Just as you were talking, I had a fantasy of seeing if we could have a card table at the farmers market, where a lot of people come on Saturday mornings, and it's going to be starting up in April. Maybe just for an hour, not the whole morning, or we could have a table and we could do our shifts. And just any questions about Unitarianism or spiritual journeying, and just be a presence. We'd probably have to pay something to be at the farmer's market. I know the vendor people have to pay. But I just, I think that'd be easy and fun, and a lot of people would probably stop and ask a question or make a comment or something, and we could have a sign-up contact list if you want to be on our e-list for what's going on each week, and, that would be an easy thing to do.
Nancy, to answer your question about random people, 25 years ago, I didn't know a UU from anything else, and I was in a writing workshop, and a friend said that he was going to be reading his story, and I said, great, I want my wife to hear it. Where are you going to be reading it? And he said, at the All Souls Church in Brattleboro. And I said, oh, well, we can't go. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we're Jewish. He says, you don't know much about Unitarian Universalism, do you? I said, no. But we went, we had a wonderful welcome, and I've been coming back ever since. And my point is that it may be that it's not an either or, but a yes and. Yes, we need marketing. We need to do things that kind of are general, throwing a big net. But I think there's a lot to be said for a targeted and personal approach. I tried to reach out to, over a handful of people to encourage them to come to this meeting. My friend Carlin and Tom did come to this meeting, and it may be that some of what we need to do is more old-fashioned than new technology. And there may be nothing more tried and true than the personal connection of saying, hey, it would mean a lot to me if you would come and check this out. I think you'd enjoy it, and we'd love you to, see what we're doing.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Carlin, and I think my idea is a long shot here, but it also feels really important to mention it. And I don't know if it's sacrilegious to bring up the political situation in Greenfield, but I've come to understand, even though I don't live in Greenfield, that there's a bit of a crossroads coming up in the election in November, and that there's some things going on in town government that definitely don't square with UU values. And the new person, what do I want to say? The candidate for change, I think, does align more with UU values. And I don't know if there's a way to help get out the vote, to really make a contribution to positive change in Greenfield by helping get out the vote in Greenfield among Greenfield citizens. As I say, I can't vote here, but I really care a lot about what happens to this town. And I hear that it's going to be very different if there isn't a change. So I don't know if there's a way to sponsor debates, for instance, between the candidates, or sponsor at-home meetings with the candidates that associate us with getting the vote out, not necessarily with a specific candidate, but with getting the vote out. And I don't know if that means aligning ourselves with the League of Women Voters, because I don't know what they do, but I hear that they do things like that. So that would be a way, as I say, to associate ourselves with our values by getting the vote out.
Thank you, Carlin. Tom, and let's have just a couple more, and then what we're going to do is get to the, raise your hand if you want to.
Hi. Well, I just wanted to share a couple of things that I've learned over the years. It's interesting that very few of the things we're talking about here have anything to do with money. And that's understandable. I mean, because this isn't a problem that you could solve by, you can't attract people by throwing money at it, okay? Number one, I'd like to say that actually, since I've been to this church, the attendance has gone up and down. There was a time in 1960s, I was told there were usually 9 people in the sanctuary. So it's interesting to me, for those of you who don't know, I also am a lay preacher at the Northfield UU Church and the Bernison UU Church. And what I learned from those other communities is that they each have their strengths, they each have their attachments to their buildings, and they don't really compete with each other. I've never seen anybody get stolen from one to the other. I've always thought that the three churches of Franklin County ought to be more integrated. And the other thing that church consultants will tell you, there are these companies, nonprofit companies that advise churches. One is the Albans Institute. And what they tell you is younger people want help with raising their children, and they start looking for a church home in late July and August, when most Unitarian churches are on vacation. The other thing is, when I came here, we did have a very vigorous, all the rooms downstairs we had 6 different classrooms of things, and that was us boomers. It was great to see. It's great to see you here today, Christine and Rocky. And there was a whole cohort of boomers with kids who came here. Only the Northfield Church right now has anything close to a critical mass. They usually have 6 or 7 kids, and they also are the youngest drawing population of the UU churches. And I would recommend you need to have you need to have enough kids to do an RE program. I was in Los Angeles and I only had 6 kids in my senior high group at the UU church in a town with twice as many people as there are in all of this county. So each of these churches has their own special aspects. We're the only church that has a choir. Berniston is the only church that does art groups. Northfield is the only church that has a contract minister and has an RE program. In terms of marketing, I think all 3 churches should market together. There are other cooperations that we could have. The other thing to talk about is the buildings. I just realized that these buildings, each one of them is an antique that has a special meaning to the people in it. Now, one of the ways, as you said, Rob, most people come to a Unitarian church not because they read an article, but because a friend brought them there, or they heard something. Sometimes they go to a wedding at a Unitarian church, and they're really surprised that it's not, you don't have to recite the Nicene Creed. And they don't know. That's a larger problem for the whole denomination. I think the idea of being more integrated with the Unitarian Universalist Association as a whole is really part of that whole issue. But we have a great resource here, mortgage-free, sitting on the corner of Hope and Main. But when it comes to planting trees, I know that attic is empty. I know that all the heat that we generate in here goes up through the attic. I know that we don't have any solar panels on this church, and the Jehovah's Witnesses do. Isn't that an interesting statement of values? I wish that the UUA, we have this climate initiative. It would be great if the UUA made it a point. Yes, we are a green sanctuary, but we need help in terms of consultation. I mean, I was involved with trying to insulate this attic, and actually, from a structural standpoint, I won't go into all that stuff. So those are my inputs. That it's not really attracting people. It's a matter of getting offering help to younger families. Then they'll come. Offer help to artists and musicians who want. The biggest crowd at the Berniston Church is usually non-Unitarians who are there for their art gallery stuff. And I've said enough. Thank you.
I love what he just said. There is a very powerful connection between a full-time minister and religious education. That there is no doubt about it. The more you have a minister, the more families come for their religious education. It's a very powerful connection that you really can't get away from.
So I would love to move us towards the end of this meeting. Nancy?
I would like to propose, and this is something for the all congregational meeting to take up and think about, but I want you to start thinking about it now. But I'd like to propose that we close for January and February and open for the summer. That way, we save an awful lot on heating this facility. We don't have to worry about somebody sliding off the slippery road and getting killed on their way to church. And if we can't do too much worse than 8 people here on a Sunday. So if we only get 8 people here on July, well, that's about the same as what we've been getting in January. So let's think about that. So I'm proposing to close for January and February and open for the summer. And that's it.
Rocky.
I would like to take a second. Can you read what one finds when one looks at the uua.org website and searches for UU churches in Greenfield?
Third Congregational Society of Greenfield, Mass. So this is on the UUA.
That's on the UUA. Nobody has heard of the Third Congregational Society in Greenfield for a century. We voted as a congregation 2 years ago.
So the UUA needs to know.
Yes.
And not only one person at the UUA, which I'm sure one person knows, it's every department.
They need to change the name.
Yeah, yeah.
They need to update. Yes.
Kim. Okay, so let's start with marketing, or outreach. Either way, marketing or outreach. And I'm on that committee. Who else?
I need full name and contact.
Okay, I know, I got it. Kim, Maria, Kate. Good start. Good start. Russ. All right. Let's stop there. How about the tree committee? Pam had to go, I guess. Tom. And I'm going to put Christine Bates on that committee because she left. And then of course Pam. Oh, good. Christine, you're on that committee? Pam is on that committee. You got that? Anybody else interested in ecology, trees, kids summer camp? Maria. And Chris Parham. Okay, there was another one. Sandra's getting together, spiritual exploration. Adult RE, we could certainly call it that. Yeah. And so we've got adult RE. Did you say Maria? Yeah. And did we miss a committee, music committee, weekend music or wild music committee? We don't have really a music committee, we have a choir. And so if there really is going to be,
Well, I think it would be wise, put my time where my mouth is. I think that so several of us have been saying that we are literally and figuratively sitting on top of our greatest natural resource at the moment, stone soup. And I happen to know, and some of you do as well, that this coming Friday, the 31st, Stone Soup is going to be doing a coffee house, an open stage. And I think, and maybe Annie, you would join me and some others, that it's a natural opportunity to be a liaison with Stone Soup and say, yeah, let's do more of those events, and let's try to have those events be a little bit of a sort of funnel that
helps people know about this beautiful sanctuary and these cool services and music that we do on Sundays. So I'll step up to try to be a liaison with Stone Soup around music. Tina, you're nodding. Would you maybe join me? Yes, but are you willing in this moment to commit several $1,000s to me to be part of it? But anyway, if you're willing to at least consider joining me in this effort, I would appreciate it. Anyone else want to get involved in kind of great, yay.
Annie, how about Annie?
You know, I just want to say that every opportunity that I get on the line in Stone Soup, I mention the church, and I mention what we're talking about, and I have continually invited. But I think that's great. That's great. I'll support you with that, Rob. And the other thing I've really missed is, and I thank you, Kate, for bringing it back, is they have food. You know, food is a beautiful thing. And when people come, we haven't been able to do that for a couple of years, masks and everything. Even this little thing, if people can come and nice a little bit and get to know each other, it's great to get to know each other, and it really draws people together. So thank you, Kate, for bringing that back. And
How about just a big thank you, Kate, period? The woman has like done so many things to try to make all this possible.
And I also want to throw in, shall we do monthly potlucks downstairs?
Yes, we can be great. I'll be able to
Yes.
bring something.
Let's do that.
There's no place to sit.
Yeah, there is. We can push we had a party January 15th or something like that. And it was a little bit of throwing things out of the way, but it worked. It's a clean space and we leave it clean.
Can I come back to this Stone Soup connection? I thought maybe for both of you said it.
Yes.
We got a few more names
Kim?
here,
Maria. We're on the Stone Soup music/liaison music committee. Anybody else have any wonderful committee ideas? Like they want people behind them when they say, I will. So maybe we've really done a lot. Wonderful ideas.
I feel like these are a nice place to say
Yeah, it's
thank
1
you.
o'clock.
Just
Just want to say one last thing. Because I'm a new member of Eventide, a hospice singing group, and our annual concert is this afternoon at 3 o'clock over, I think it's the UU Church? No, Second Congregational Church, where we practice. So again, opening the church to other groups who might need to practice here, and they will also spread words. So I need to run. I'm very excited about the rebirth of this church. Thank you, Kate.
Maria said, I want to know, are people going to do it? I'll join, but I want people joining. So she's the inspiration for this meeting. Tom. Bill.
About 15 years ago, I helped organize a spoken word event, a poetry event mostly, in Orange around domestic violence. I was working for the Men Overcoming Violence program. And I was amazed by how many people came and how successful it was. And I organized it. I'm not that well organized, and it still happened. So, I don't know if I could lead such a thing, but I think it's very powerful. It's a great way to connect, and it could have some singing involved as well. Anything that people can express themselves heartfully, and I think will draw people here. I could see it in this environment. It'd be like yeah. It would. Oh yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
The choir today is just starting out again. It's been shut down for the whole pandemic, and I don't know how much further back than that. So just a little ways down the road, I don't see why the choir couldn't possibly do something at a Stone Soup open house. Join up those two.
Dan, is there a comment on the from Zoomers?
Couple here. Betsy would help. Sandra with spiritual exploration. Actually, I didn't like her. Sorry, Zoomers. I wasn't looking at my chat window was hidden. We had from Betsy saying she'd help Sandra with spiritual exploration. Martha Elliott would like to be on the tree committee. I hope I read you right there. And there was a suggestion from Emma to have a room for kids in the back. I don't think she was aware that the Chapman room does have a speaker in it, and as far as I know, it's working. One of the things I'd like to say about social media is our YouTube channel. We actually get a lot of views on that, and it's really I'm not curating it all that well in terms of trimming things down so people can just see the sermon. But that's one of the ways that people can, we should advertise that in the front, that you can see our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Dan. Attracting young families is Carlin's question. Do we have somebody who wants to lead that attracting young families, finding out what young families are needing, looking at? It's amorphous, it's so huge. And I think we keep just sort of bouncing back into RE, but that's kind of what it seems like it needs more than just that.
Yeah, and I think the other idea that I heard that was a really good one was to reach out to the elementary schools through some kind of a ecological environmental initiative, and maybe that poster idea that they draw posters and the winners get to come and present theirs, but somewhere where we go to where the children are instead of trying to get the children to find us here. Rocky, did you have something?
I was just going to kind of follow up on several suggestions. Rob mentioned going to the UU Church in Bratt for storytelling. I would put that in on the open mic, possibly having a storytelling evening, social awareness stories. If you wish it to be.
So I would say that we have some ideas for kids which would tie into the tree business. Schools, outreach to schools, brandish our name all over the place. I think we've got adult RE, Stone Soup liaison related to music and open mic and stuff like that. We have a tree planting committee, which is relatively huge, large, big, wide oak, and a marketing or outreach committee. I think that is wonderful and a good place to start, and a good place to stop. All right.
Thank you to our faithful scribe. Look at this.
So maybe picking up paper stuff, so help clean up.
I had to cross out mom's parents.